All right. Make yourselves very, very much at home. Okay. So, tonight's sponsors. Tonight's learning is dedicated in memory of Simcha ben Esther Zatzal. May his neshama have an aliyah. And for the refuah shlema of Menachem Mendel ben Sarabatya and Devorah Fega bat Rezel, and for the refuah shlema of Shira Gittel bas Toiba Rivka. Now, today's topic is unfortunately rather boring. The topic is the Antifa, the alt-right, and our slippery slope society. For those of us who are not familiar with the terms Antifa and the alt-right, don't worry, we're going to explain them, we'll go into it. I wanted to say to our virtual audience, first of all, thank you for being here, obviously, although not thank you as much as the people who are actually here. Thank you a little less than them. But please share it, comment so I'll know you're here. I'll give you a shout out or something. It's always great. It's always great to feel the love and to see the love. And the audio's blown out? Oh no, that's not good.
No blown out.
Is this better? I'm using. Fix your mic, too loud, echoey, and garbled. Okay, thank you, Eli, I appreciate that very much. Is this better? Because I'm using a mic today. Because last week I got hella grief. So I figured I'm gonna use this mic. Is this better now? If not, I'm just gonna unplug it and we're gonna go regular. Somebody tell me on this feed, please, is the audio now upsy daisy or downsy daisy?
I can't hear you.
No. All right, that's it. We're unplugging. Okay, and unplugged we are. Very nice. And as always, down. Yes, thank you, Giddy. I appreciate it. Schwach, shkoyach. Okay, so as always, we're sponsored by Diet Coke, which is yes. Okay. So I would imagine that each and every one of us is aware of the of recent occurrences in Virginia, but perhaps on the off chance that somebody has been living under a rock, I will very quickly go through what happened. There is a park named after Robert E. Lee. Robert E. Lee was he was the general of he was the, I think, top general in the Confederate Army during the Civil War. And there's a park named after him with a big statue of him in the middle of it. And they decided to take it down. Now, some people thought that was a great idea. Some people thought that was a terrible idea, like anything that happens in this country. And among the people that thought it was a terrible idea are the very peace-loving Knights of the Ku Klux Klan, in addition to alt-right. Alt-right just means, call them Nazis, call them white supremacists, call them whatever you want, okay? We'll call them Nazis because it's easier and I'm Jewish, so that's how my mind does it, but they're the same guy. They're basically the same guy. And they didn't like this. And they decided to hold a rally. Well, if they're going to rally, then people who don't like them are also going to rally against them, and that's enter Antifa. Antifa is the anti-fascist group. We will discuss them at length very soon, and they came and they counter-protested. Now, shockingly, there was violence, and it was terrible. It was terrible, right? It's bad enough that, like, the KKK exists, but, there were people that, there was a lady that died, okay, culminated in a young lady losing her life and people being run over by a car and it gives me chills to like say it out loud because it doesn't seem like it's real, but it's real. It happened, and you can see it on YouTube. And honestly, I suggest that you do see it. I really do. I suggest and I implore and I encourage everybody to look at some video footage so you can see what it was like, because it's important to know what's real out there. And I don't mean the edited videos of any of the particular news stations that you might watch. I'm not talking about edited videos. Go on YouTube and look at the things that people took out of their pocket and just went like this and held it up. That's the stuff that we should be looking at, and it's really horrific. So we're going to deal with that. I'm not interested in Trump's reaction, frankly. I couldn't care less. But we're going to talk about the following 4 things today, okay? 4 things. Number 1, we're going to talk about the Nazis, the neo-Nazis, the skinheads, the KKK. We're going to talk about them. Number 2, we're going to talk about Antifa, the anti-fascists. Number 3, we're going to talk about slippery slope arguments. Now, most people are familiar with the idea of a slippery slope argument, but they're not necessarily familiar with the terminology. A slippery slope argument is as follows. If A is fine, but it leads to B, and B is bad, then we should not allow A to happen. So for example, if drinking kiddush on Friday night leads to becoming an alcoholic, and alcoholism is bad, we should make it illegal to drink kiddush on Friday night. Okay? Now, they call this a slippery slope argument because it's something that starts on a slope and it's slippery to fall down to where we do not want to be. This is one of the very famous logical fallacies. Things that it doesn't necessarily follow, and we're going to discuss it also at length. And then finally, so again, number 1, the KKK, number 2, Antifa, number 3, slippery slopes, and number 4, the Torah. We're going to try to detect how exactly the Torah thinks we should deal with these issues, with these massive social issues which permeate our society, unfortunately. Therefore, to begin, we have Nazis living here. Like it's crazy. First of all, I thought Indiana Jones killed all the Nazis. I didn't know they existed anymore. But no, like they're there and they're real. They're real. And you see them like marching down the street with their bad haircuts and their tiki torches and their swastika tattoos and they're chanting, loud, right? The white lives matter. White lives matter. Of course, they're really only missing one word, right? What they mean is only white lives matter. That's what they really mean by that.
Swastika flags.
Yes, of course, swastika flags, and they're chanting also, the Jews will not replace us! The Jews will not replace us! Which is hilarious, because Jews are never going to replace them as illiterate people. Like, we're not going to replace them. We don't want to be that. I don't understand who it is that told them that we're very jealous of the skinheads, but guys, newsflash, if you're watching, which they're not, but we're not, dude. Like, Daily Stormer, dude, we're not. We don't want to be you. Anyway, they were chanting this, and it's terrifying. It's terrifying. To watch it on screen is like, oh my, it is 1938 in Europe. Like, that's what it looks like. And it's Virginia! It's the USA in 2017. Who would have thought? Terrible, terrible thing. So, the first question that we have to deal with as a society, how do we deal with these people? Like how do we rid ourselves of them? You understand that the Nazis, the neo-Nazis, the KKK that we have today, they are basically the equivalent of society's colon cancer. Okay, that's what they are. How do we get rid of them? How do we deal with that? So you have a few options, right? There's 3 options off the top of my mind that you can think of. Number 1, you can make it illegal. You could make it illegal to be a card-carrying knight of the Ku Klux Klan. You could do that, right? It's not a problem. One way to do it is make it illegal. Another way to do it is beat them up, right? Punch their lights out. You see them in the street, and you just wail on them, right? You pull out your baseball bat, and you go to town. Good old-fashioned American West style. It's another thing that you can do. The third thing that you can do is nothing. Ignore them. Let them be, kind of ignore them, which is obviously what has been happening for a very long time. They're enabled, they're allowed to exist, and therefore they exist. Enter Antifa. Enter the anti-fascists. Now, before I get into this, I should reiterate that I'm going to try very hard to address comments that pop up on the feeds. I have them in front of me. I'm going to try. Bear with me. So, what is Antifa? What is the anti-fascist group? Well, number 1, it's important to point out that they're not one cohesive group with one leader and one website, so it's easy to interview them. You could interview David Duke, you can interview Richard Spencer, you can interview your local grand wizard of the whatever. It doesn't work that way with Antifa. However, there is a lot online that you can find, and in fact, I went to one site which is up and it has all their stuff. It's phillyantifa.org. Yes, Ari, don't worry, we're going to talk about that, Bunny Bear. We're going to talk about that. So if you go to phillyantifa.org, all of the following quotes I'm going to bring you from their website, and you're please encouraged to look it up. So, who's Antifa? Who are they? Well, from their website. While many types of organizations consider their goal to be to fight racism and fascism, Antifa as a moniker usually implies the group or person is militant in their analysis and willing to engage in or support those that engage in direct confrontation and disruptive tactics against neo-Nazis, Klansmen, and other types of bigots. So, Baruch Hashem! Baruch Hashem! Right, our saviors have arrived. Finally, Antifa has come to save us from the Nazis. Thank goodness. Now, that's me. They didn't write Baruch Hashem on their website. Okay. Now, we disrupt fascist and far-right organizing and activity. Very noble goal. We don't rely on the cops or courts to do our work for us. This doesn't mean we never go to court, but the cops uphold white supremacy and the status quo. They attack us and everyone who resists oppression. We must rely on ourselves to protect ourselves and stop the fascists. Okay. Now, from their frequently asked questions, I've heard Antifa are violent. Is this true? And I quote, anyone who is resisting neo-Nazi, KKK, or other fascist groups will inevitably be forced to at least defend themselves from violence. Right, that's obvious. I read that in a science book somewhere. Liberal anti-racists are attacked for their completely legal and non-violent work. Antifa know that when you oppose fascism and racism, or if you're a member of a population being targeted by fascists, sometimes the best defense is a good offense. Right? We learned that from Brady. Antifa generally adhere to a no-platform policy for racists and fascists, meaning we would oppose their organization's attempts to speak in public, hold political demonstrations, or recruit openly. History has shown time and time again what happens when demagogues are allowed to lie and inflame people's bigotries in short-sighted pursuit of power. Only the most privileged or naive can still assume a wait-and-see attitude towards Nazis and fascists. Great. Meaning, allowing the KKK to protest, to march, to rally, is a slippery slope. If you allow them to rally, you're gonna have Hitler. If you allow that sort of hate to fester, the society will get swallowed into it, and pretty soon, you're Germany circa 1938. Now, but by the way, if you could go back in time and stop Hitler, like, you wouldn't do that? If you could go and kill Hitler's mother before he was born, would you do that? I mean, I'm asked this question, I love it, but I would. I would. I'm not telling you that you have to. I'm not telling you that I'm right for the fact that I would. I'm just telling you in all honesty that I gladly would. And usually if people ask me, would you shoot Hitler's mother? My first question is, how many bullets do I have? You know, I want to make sure that I get all the larvae. You know, you have to be careful. But that doesn't mean that it's the right thing to do. You know, this is just Sprung talking. So why is this true? Why does Antifa believe that if you allow KKK to exist and march, even peacefully, non-violently, if you allow them to exist, if you allow them to speak, then you will end up with Hitler in the end? Well, because they quote from a guy named Franz Friesen, who's a Holocaust survivor. And this guy, Mr. Friesen, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing his name, I'm sorry. He said as follows, and I quote, if fascism could be defeated in debate, I assure you that it would never have happened. Neither in Germany, it is the Holocaust. It wouldn't have happened in Germany, nor in Italy, nor anywhere else. Those who recognized its threat at the time and tried to stop it were, I assume, also called a mob. Regrettably, too many fair-minded people didn't try, or they didn't want to stop it. And as I witnessed myself during the war, accommodated themselves when I took over. People who witnessed fascism at its height are dying out, but the ideology is still here. And its apologists are working hard at a comeback. Past experience should teach us that fascism must be stopped before it takes hold against too many minds and becomes useful once again to some powerful interests. So, Antifa's position is that if you allow the KKK to speak, you're going to end up with Hitler. Excellent. Now, so to return to our first question, we said, well, what should we do? How do we deal with the neo-Nazis? How do we deal with American Nazis? And we gave 3 options. Option number 1, I know, right? It's hot as anything in here. It's crazy. Option number 1 is make it illegal. Well, Antifa doesn't say that making it illegal is going to help because the government is a white supremacist organization. So you clearly can't rely upon the government to help you even if they claimed it was illegal. Now, do nothing. Well, you can't do nothing because if you do nothing, then in X number of years, you're going to have Hitler. Slippery slopes, remember? So what does that leave us with? The third option. What was the third option? Hit him in the face! Pop him in the head! Kill him! Beat their brains out in the streets. So they can't darken our doors. Don't let them speak, don't let them protest, don't let them rally, don't let them recruit, drive them underground. So basically, Antifa is doing what the government won't do. Antifa is Batman! Let's analyze this. Let's talk for a moment about speech. Let's talk about hate speech. Now, I'm not a lawyer. I'm barely a rabbi. I'm not a lawyer, but I spoke to 2 lawyers last night. 2 lawyers, because I knew if I made a mistake, oh God, would I hear it today? So I figure I'm going to make sure. I'd call 2 different attorneys. If you can get, that's 100% true, Galana. That's 100% true. We're going to Obviously, these are generalizations, number one. Not everybody who was at the rally on either side. I didn't think this needed to be said, but it's important to point out. So before we continue with the hate speech business, it's important to point out that there were many people on both sides of that rally who were there simply because they either felt that the statue should be taken down or that it should not. And that's fine. Just like any other political discussion in this country, there are plenty of really, really good people who think one way or the other about it, right? And that's a fact. And that doesn't mean you're from Antifa, and it doesn't mean you're from the KKK. That's obvious, but if you don't say obvious things nowadays sometimes, so it's important to point out, and very, very true. Now, let's talk about hate speech. Let's talk about hate speech. Hate speech isn't illegal. Why not? Why isn't hate speech illegal? Why can I get up and say, I hate all the Jews and they're terrible and they run Hollywood and they own the government and they're taking over all of our businesses and they're bringing their terrible policies into this country and they're usurious people and they destroy the banking system and the insurance system? Why am I allowed to say such horrible things?
Because it's freedom of speech.
Because it's freedom of speech in America. There's freedom of speech. So by the way, guess what? Hate speech is free speech. It is free speech. You can do that in America. In America, you retain, and we say this often, you retain the right to be a jerk in this country. And worse than a jerk. You retain the right to be words that I'm not going to say because we're in a shul. You're allowed to do that. Now, well, why is that the case? Why is hate speech included under free speech? Maybe when the framers of the Constitution wrote that people have the right to free speech and the freedom of assembly, what they meant to say was that you're allowed to criticize the government policies, you're allowed to speak about opposition and not, pull a Putin on you and send you off to the gulag. Maybe that's what they meant. Well, guess what? It went to SCOTUS. It went to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court recently ruled, very recently, in the past year, ruled that hate speech is free speech. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, yeah, but Sprung, it's a conservative court. It's a conservative court. So, of course, Alito and Roberts and Thomas, obviously they also said corporations are people, all right? So, why wouldn't they like hate speech? Those people love hate speech. No. Unanimous. It was unanimous. Sotomayor and Kagan, they were on that too, right alongside Alito. Now, Scalia wasn't there because he was already in the grave, but I think we all know how he would have voted, right? So this was a unanimous decision. And that's very, very strange. That's very strange. Galana says, you can say hateful things, that doesn't mean there won't be consequences. Well, if I say something and you don't like it and you hit me, that's what we're going to deal with, right? That's exactly what it is that we're going to try and decide where the limits of that should be. So stay tuned. We're going exactly there. So it is protected, and I would like to read to you two very small excerpts of a few sentences from the decision that the Supreme Court rendered. I think it's very eye-opening. Number one, the idea that the government may restrict speech expressing ideas that offend strikes at the heart of the First Amendment. Speech that demeans on the basis of race, ethnicity, religion, age, disability, or any other similar ground is hateful. It's hateful. But the proudest boast of our free speech jurisprudence is that we protect the freedom to express the thought that we hate. So, the fact that you hate what is being said, yeah, no thanks, Sam. The fact that you hate what is being said, that's what we're protecting. The founders of the Constitution didn't have to make an amendment to protect the speech that everybody liked, right? It's not like they had this, it's sort of like, the NFL doesn't advertise, right? They don't do a lot of advertising. Why not? Because they're awesome, right? They don't need to advertise. You don't need to allow the speech that everybody likes. You need to allow the speech that everybody hates, and that's why they put that in. Now, that's the first piece. I would like to read you a second piece. A law that can be directed against speech found offensive to some portion of the public can be turned against minority and dissenting views to the detriment of all. The First Amendment does not entrust that power to the government's benevolence. Instead, our reliance must be on the substantial safeguards of free and open discussion in a democratic society. Now, let's put this in layman's terms for those of us that know habla. This means the reason that we are upholding hate speech as free speech is because if you don't, it's a slippery slope. The Supreme Court is calling it a slippery slope. The Supreme Court is saying that if you do not allow people to express hateful, disdainful, despicable views, but rather you curtail their ability to say this thing or that thing, then at any point, the majority can impose restrictions upon the minority and what they can say. Well, that means that we have two different things going on here. You have Antifa and you have the Supreme Court. And each one of them is claiming that it's a slippery slope to allow something to happen. Antifa's claiming that if you allow hate speech, it evolves into Hitler. The Supreme Court is arguing that if you don't allow hate speech, we're going to take people's ability to say things away, and then that would be bad. So, for example, like if the Buddhist majority in the country would be able to restrict your right to speak badly about cows, for example, right? Because after all, if we're the majority and we find speaking unkindly about cows to be offensive, I'm not making fun of Buddhist people, I'm just giving obviously an absurd example, but that would follow from this. If you allow them to say, we're the majority and we are curtailing your speech that we find hateful and offensive, you are no longer allowed to say not nice things about cows. Okay, well. So they each have a slippery slope argument. Whose eventuality is scarier? Is Hitler scarier to you than, well, maybe some people won't be able to say some things? I think it is. Again, I'm Jewish, right? So my take on this might be a little bit different than other people's take.
If you look at like Muslim countries, I mean, people get thrown in jail all the time for just, they said something that was against Islam, and it's up to whoever's in charge throws them in jail for doing that. So very hard to go in both directions here.
Beautiful. So we have two slippery slopes in two different directions. One slippery slope, you allow hate speech, you get Hitler. The other slippery slope, you take away hate speech, you get ISIS. Who's better, Hitler, ISIS? I don't know. They're both right. They're the same guy, right? So we have a big issue. We don't know who has the better argument. Let's talk about slippery slope arguments. Let's talk about it. People often have a difficult time differentiating when an argument is a logical fallacy and when an argument is actually strong. When saying that this will lead to X and saying it's not going to lead to X. How do you know? How can you be sure? And I'm going to give you what I believe is a fail-safe, concrete method of figuring out any slippery slope argument that you will ever come across. Very simple. Very, very simple. All you got to do is take the logic and apply it forward. I'll explain what I mean by that. So, to begin, I Googled like slippery slope argument so that I can get like some kind of visual representation for people of what that would look like. And the very first thing on my Google images was this really great comic, incredibly offensive, so I love it. I hope y'all can see it. I'm going to read this to you, okay? As you can see, there are four slides. What do they call that? Four squares. Squares. Four shapes. There's now these little comics here are dealing with three cases of law that went to the Supreme Court, either of the country or of a state, and it begins Loving versus Virginia in 1967. This guy turns to people and says, "Just you watch." This is referring to interracial marriage. In 1967, it was illegal for a white person and a black person to get married. And there was a lawsuit that went all the way to the Supreme Court, and guess what? Again, unanimously, the Supreme Court decided that it's absolutely fine for people of any color to get married, blue, purple, orange, or green. So he says as follows, "Just you watch. Now that black can marry white people are going to be marrying house pets." This is what people were saying in 1967. Okay. Now we move to 1973, and we deal with Roe versus Wade. That's the one that everybody knows, right? Every kid knows that one. Now that abortion is legal, we're certain to make it legal to commit infanticide in a year now. Infanticide means baby killing. Take a baby, throw him off a cliff. Woo! Many cultures did it for a very long time. If you allow abortion, obviously you're going to end up allowing killing babies. And then there's Goodridge in 2003, which deals with gay marriage. This was in the Supreme Court of the state of Massachusetts, and it says if gays can marry, legal incest and bigamy will come next. It's inevitable! And then the very last slide, they say, dude, I don't think this slope is nearly as slippery as you think it is. And he says, oh, shut up. Okay? The obvious point of this comic being that despite what the Supreme Courts decided in 1967, 1973, and 2003, guess what? People are still not allowed to marry house pets. People are still not allowed to murder infants. And people are still not allowed to commit incest or bigamy. And therefore you see that the slippery slope argument is always fallacious. Let's analyze. Take the logic and apply it. We'll start with Loving versus Virginia. Okay? This was the case that said that people of any color can marry anyone they like. And I quote from the decision. The 14th Amendment requires that the freedom of choice to marry not be restricted by invidious racial discrimination. Invidious means unjust. By unjust racial discrimination. Under our Constitution, the freedom to marry or not to marry a person of another race resides with the individual and cannot be infringed by the state. So, what is their reasoning for saying that people of any color can marry whomever they like? Very simple. Very, very simple. Because people, individuals, have the freedom to choose whom to marry and whom not to marry. The state does not possess that right. Well, are hamsters individuals? No. And therefore, the logic that any two individuals can marry each other does not apply to a person marrying a hamster. And in fact, that sort of reasoning only makes sense to someone who is so despicable that he thinks a person of X race or Y race is an animal. But anyone who doesn't think that doesn't see a slippery slope argument there at all. They say two individuals can marry whomever they want. So anyone who sees a problem with that logic is a bigot. Next. Obviously, therefore, that would be a fallacy. Now let's move on to abortion. And I quote, this was not a unanimous decision, this was a 5-4. The right of privacy, whether it be founded in the 14th Amendment or as the district court determined in the 9th Amendment's reservation of rights to the people, is broad enough to encompass a woman's decision whether or not to terminate her pregnancy. Now, love it, hate it, anything in between, I don't care. The bottom line is the logic which enabled women to get abortions in this country was that a woman's right to privacy is enshrined within the Constitution. Now, will your right to privacy allow you to take a 2-year-old baby and throw it off a cliff? Obviously not. So in the immortal words of Louis C.K., abortion is either totally fine or it's murder. But it's one or the other. And certainly it has nothing to do with 2-year-olds. It's not the issue. And therefore, again, it's a logical fallacy. Because the reasoning that you are using towards your point does not apply. Now we move to 2003, gay marriage. The court was asked to determine whether Massachusetts may deny the protections, benefits, and obligations conferred by civil marriage to two individuals of the same sex who wish to marry. We conclude that it may not. The Massachusetts Constitution, say that 3 times fast, affirms the dignity and equality of all individuals. It forbids the creation of second-class citizens. You're not allowed to say that gay people are less than you. You can't, I mean, you can say it, but the law disagrees with you. The law doesn't care what you think. Think whatever you like, say whatever you like we said, right, whatever you like, scream whatever you like, but the law disagrees. There's no second-class citizens. Now, the argument is, well, if you allow that, then you're going to allow, right around the corner, bigamy and incest. Well, let's see. What is the reasoning behind that? The reasoning behind that is two consenting adults, right? Consenting adults can do whatever they want. Wait a minute. If consenting adults can do whatever they want, can I marry my mother? Yeah, I could. 100%. There's nothing wrong with that. If consenting adults can do whatever they want, can 3 husbands be married to 1 wife? Yes. Yes. It's the same logic. That's not a slippery slope argument. That's the very same reasoning. The reasoning which allows gay marriage says that people who consent can do whatever they want, as long as they're of age. Great. Now guess what? Not that anybody cares what I think, okay? But I'm all for it. I'm all for it. And I would vote to support it. Because the same laws, and this guy, but you're an Orthodox Jew. Listen, man, my Torah, my religion's my religion. I'm not going to go and legislate my religion upon other people. Do I want all the Christians to keep Shabbat? Why? Do I force all the Jews to keep Shabbat? Like, this is not anybody's business. So the same laws that enable me to do what I want to do in this country and not legislate their morality upon me also means that I can't legislate my morality upon anybody else. So if two consenting adults who happen to be brother and sister Targaryen want to marry each other, hallelujah, I don't care. Ride the dragon, dude. I don't care. Here's my prophecy to you. Within the next 10 years, bigamy will be legal in this country. There's no question. It will be. Eventually, incest will also. And if you say, but Sprung, that's very, very different. That's very, very different, Sprung, because, incest leads to the Mad King, right? Incest leads to terrible genetics. What are you, a Nazi? You don't let people with bad genetics get married? You don't let people who have all sorts of genetic issues make babies that are going to have genetic issues? Of course you do, right? You're not Eichmann. People can do whatever they want. Or they can use birth control, frankly, but that's not the issue. So yeah, that would not be a slippery slope argument. That would be absolutely that would be applying the reasoning from A to B. Okay, well, let's return to Antifa and the Supreme Court, shall we? Let's return to that. The Supreme Court's logic was, if you said that people are not allowed to say things that you declare hateful, then eventually the majority can take away the minority's right to say anything that they find offensive. Now, is that true? Yeah, that's 100% true. It's the same logic. If I could take away this hateful speech, I can take away any hateful speech. What's the problem? The problem is who defines hateful? The answer is the listener. The listener defines hateful. I define it. I define hateful. I define offensive. And if there are more people that agree with me than with you, you're not allowed to say that anymore. For example, the word socialism in this country was a dirty word until very recently. It was a dirty word, but you were allowed to say it. And in fact, we look back at the Goldwater period, when people were running around trying to ferret out communists and stuff like that. We look back on that as a pox, as a black mark on our history. It's a black mark on the history, running around outing people for their political views. You should be allowed to express whatever political view you happen to think, and whatever horrible, disgusting, despicable view you happen to hold. Now let's look at Antifa's logic. Antifa's logic was, hate speech leads to violence. So again, hate speech leads to violence, and violence is bad. Therefore, we should not allow hate speech. Can you outlaw violence without outlawing speech? Sure. In fact, we did. We said, say whatever you want, but your right to talk ends at my face. You can, who was it that said, I forget who it said, that your right to wave your fist around ends where my nose begins. You can jump up and down and scream at me, you just can't hit me. Now, but that's not, so it's not just that the argument isn't any good, it's so much funnier than that. It's hilarious. Listen to the point that they're saying. Listen to the point. Hate speech leads to violence, and violence is bad. And therefore, anyone who has hate speech, we will be violent against preemptively. Unbelievable. Violence is bad, so I'll be violent against you. Incredible. I mean, it's incredible. I don't understand how everybody doesn't see this, by the way. I mean, it's ridiculous, right? Punch a fascist. And again, what Jew isn't going to be all about that? What Jew isn't going to be like, high five, you punched a Nazi? And I get it. Who doesn't want to punch a Nazi? It's a great game. But it's a bad game. So, who are Antifa really? I'll tell you. You know who they are? They're Stalin. Listen to this. This is from the Encyclopedia Britannica. I don't have the paper, the hard copy anymore, but thankfully they're online. What is Stalinism? Okay, so Stalin's doctrine of the monolithic party emerged during the battle for power. He condemned the rotten liberalism of those who tolerated discussion on or dissent from party policies. If you discuss discuss disagreeing with my policies, you're a traitor. Can't discuss it. Lenin's pronouncements, except those uncomplimentary of Stalin, were codified as axioms not open to question. Persons opposed to these new dogmas were accused of treason to the party. Well, I mean, obviously it's reasonable that we're violent against traitors, right? Obviously that's reasonable. You could be violent against traitors, right? Treachery is terrible. What was their treason? They didn't like the president. Quick, send them to the gulag. 50 million dead. Like that. You don't need bombs. You can kill them with cold. So, now, here's why, again, it's even more funny. Do you know what the definition of fascism is? Fascism is a word that everybody throws around, right? But what does it mean?
Sticks together. It's Italian.
What's that?
It actually comes in a bunch of sticks that are tied with a rope and create like unity that symbolizes.
Really? That's what it comes from? Mm-hmm. That's fascinating. I didn't know that. Mm-hmm. So I looked it up because I did not know. This is, by the way, very, very interesting that your English is better than mine with them. I'm just saying. Who would have thought? So fascism, according to dictionary.com, is a governmental system led by a dictator having complete power, forcibly suppressing opposition and criticism, regimenting all industry and commerce, and emphasizing an aggressive nationalism and often racism. Now, is it true that fascism is generally includes racism? Yeah, it usually does. Does it have to be fascism? No, it doesn't. But what do fascism and Stalinism have in common? Anything that you say that is not within our approved party lines, we can hurt you. We can hurt you. And in fact, it's a mitzvah to hurt you. So really the question is, who's better? Who would you rather have, Hitler or Stalin? I mean, I don't know. It's, oh God, decisions, right? Chocolate or vanilla.
As a Jew, you prefer Stalin.
Probably, right? I don't know. The Jews in Russia, man, they didn't like Stalin a lot, but you're right. He wasn't always going to other countries. As a Jew, yeah, that's true. As a Jew, I would take Stalin over Hitler. I am not, in any way, shape, or form, defending Nazis, okay? I hope they all die of diarrhea and rot in hell forever. I'm not defending Nazis. I'm not equating motives. I'm explaining the reality, okay? This is a reality. Your motives are secondary to your actions. Ask Baruch Goldstein. They're secondary to your actions. So, if you say it's my way or I'll hurt you, I have a problem with you. Do I have as big a problem as I have with the Nazi? Probably not, because I have a history with that guy. He's a really bad guy. And again, I think that Antifa's motives are generally better. But it doesn't matter, because I don't care about your motives, and I don't know your motives. I don't know them. I mean, I could think I know them, but I don't know them. I care about what you do. You have the right to self-defense. If a neo-Nazi pulls a knife on you, by all means, kill him. If someone's going to cause you grievous bodily harm, this is America, my friend. Click, click, boom. But if they're not, if they're going to wave their finger at you and scream disgusting things at your children, despicable people. Walk on, baby. Walk on. He has the right to be a jerk. Now, how does the Torah suggest that we deal with these things? I mean, these are problems. So you're saying I can't make it illegal, and I can't punch him, but if I do nothing, I mean, this is horrible that we allow this, so what do you do? Well, fascinatingly, in this week's portion, Re'eh, which means the sea, the Torah talks about two very famous mountains, Har Gerizim and Har Ebal. Two mountains in Israel. One mountain, they're very close to each other, and one mountain looks very nice, very pretty mountain, lots of foliage, lots of shrubs and flowers. I did the project when I was in 3rd grade, so I know it was very beautiful. And the other mountain, Har Ebal, was desolate and rocky and gross. And they split up the nation, and 6 tribes go on top of this one, and 6 tribes go on top of that mountain. And the Jews start saying blessings and curses. And just for example, they say, blessed is the man who does not curse his parents. Cursed is the man who curses his parents. Blessed is the man who does. It's very archaic language, but in the Hebrew it sounds much better. We give a blessing to a person who doesn't cut into his friend's business. And cursed is the man who does cut into his friend's business. Blessed is the man who doesn't mess with the directional sense of blind people. Cursed is the man who does mess with the directional sense of blind people, etc., etc. Now, it's a strange thing to do. It's standing on mountains and like throwing blessings and curses at each other. It's such a funny thing. It's such a weird thing for the Jews to do. And in fact, it's so important. It's so important that the Torah says that they have to do it on the very first day that they cross the Jordan River into the land of Israel. It's like mind-boggling. Why? Like, seriously, why? It's a very long walk. They didn't have, we have nice cars nowadays, Baruch Hashem, right? We're all driving cars, we're riding dirty. No, they were walking. You feel me? They were walking. And they had just walked for 40 years, like they need a break. Right? Break time. So, no. First day, cross the Jordan, boom! Har Grizim, Har Eval. Why? Well,
it's not random split between the tribes either.
No. Specific. Yes. The truth is, it's a very worthwhile discussion as to why.
Tribes went on one and which on the other.
So if you look in Kitavo, it will tell you that. We're testing over here. I believe.
You're asking why? Maybe it's related to that.
Oh. Right, I'm saying why do you have to do it the first day and why are you doing it at all? But you're right, which tribes go up here? Why is Yosef, Binyamin, Yisachar, Zvulun, and Yehuda on this one, and Reuven, Shimon, Gad, Asher, Dan, Naphtali? I could be wrong about that, but anyway, whoops. So, why? Why? And furthermore, a lot of the things that were like blessing and cursing of people are already laws in the Torah. Like you're not allowed to do idolatry, and that's there. And you're not allowed to curse your dad, and that's there. And you're not allowed to trick a blind man, and that's there. You're not allowed to steal business from people, that's there. So why are you doing these blessings and curses? I'll tell you, it's very simple. It's very simple. Because, my grandfather once told me when I was a kid, he said to me, he goes, Shlomo, why is stealing bad? Why don't we steal? I said, well, you steal, you go to jail. He goes, it's terrible. If the reason that you don't steal is because you're going to go to jail, then what you're saying is, if I don't get caught, stealing is good. That's what you're saying. And in fact, I like Ocean's 11. I like the Great Train Robbery, right? You have all these movies where the robber is the good guy. Riddle me this. How is that, dude, how is it that George Clooney is the good guy? How is that possible? The answer is because he's better looking than Andy Garcia. And the other answer is because we love a good heist. Butch and Sundance. We love this. Because the reason that you don't steal is because you're going to get caught. And therefore he said to me, he goes, you know what? You know why you don't steal? Disgusting. Steal? Feh. It's despicable to take something that belongs to somebody else. How could you do something like that? That's what you teach your children. You don't teach your children if you steal, you're going to go to jail. You teach them it's disgusting. You don't teach your kids not to do drugs because they're going to go to jail. You teach them not to do drugs because it's disgusting and it's going to ruin their lives. That's what you teach them. The day that you get into Israel, something's going to change because you're a society now. You're not living in the desert anymore. You have a society now with butchers and bakers and candlestick makers and electricians and principals and cops. Guess what? First day, you stand all together and you need a visual. It's so funny because it seems like such a silly thing. I need a visual? Yeah, you need a visual. Re'eh, see. See where one path leads and where the other path leads. And we're going to say together as a society, a person who speaks badly about his parents, curse him. He's cursed. We all say amen. Yes, we all believe that. A person who goes into his friend's business, cuts into his friend's business, curse that man. Amen, I believe that. I will stand by that. It's not about the law. Not about the law. You can legislate from today till next Wednesday. This is not about the law. This is not about the law. This is about society. It's disgusting to be a bigot. It's disgusting. You're a hater? Ich. That's how you stop. You stop it on the local level. You stop it when you're the only guy in the playground that is saying not nice things about Jewish people and black people and gay people and any people that you happen to not like. When all the other kids in the playground don't want to play with you because they think you're disgusting, then you're not going to have that anymore. So you have these pockets. By the way, I don't think that these are very powerful people. I happen to think that they're very weak and that we're making them so much bigger than they are. We're giving them so much free publicity. David Duke is sitting in his penthouse apartment somewhere and he is laughing from glee. From all the press we're giving him. He loves it.
They all love him.
Of course.
They love him when
We're putting him on the map. We're putting him on the map. You know what the response is to David Duke? You want to protest? You want to walk around a statue and scream? We're not showing up. Go walk around.
They said Fox News wouldn't put him on. They said, we think that's David Duke over there, but we won't give him screen time.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Amen.
On Saturday.
Amen. Right? Let them.
On Saturday, Fox News said, we think that's David Duke over there, but we won't give him screen time.
I love that. Oh, that's beautiful. Let them protest by themselves. Let them stand there without a camera, without a microphone, without a helicopter, and let them scream to the heavens, we hate Jews, we hate blacks, we hate gays, we hate gypsies, we hate. Scream to the clouds, buddy. Scream to the clouds. Nobody cares. I don't care about you. I don't care about what you think. You're despicable. You're a loser. I can't believe I said that. Now I sound like him. Anyway, now, what's fascinating? What's fascinating is that you know who seems to agree and take a very, very similar idea with the Torah? The Supreme Court. Again, what did they say? What did they say was the best defense against hate speech? I'll quote it to you again. Instead, our reliance must be on the substantial safeguards of free and open discussion in a democratic society. You know what kills hate speech? Truth. Truth kills hate speech. Truth. Kills it every time. Because it's wrong. It's stupid. It's just foolish. It's dumb speech. Truth kills it every time. Now, yes, Beth, you're correct. Beth points out that there are, Beth points out that there are certain limitations to free speech. For example, yelling fire in a crowded theater. That's true. Yes, that is absolutely true. It is illegal to yell fire in a crowded theater because that is going to result in many people dying, right, or getting trampled. That's true. When I say freedom of speech, again, we're dealing with hate speech, the freedom to say offensive things. That's what we're saying. So to take it all the way back to the beginning and tie it all together very, very carefully, very, very quickly, and very easily with a nice little ribbon, the Nazis and Antifa have one thing very strongly in common. Their way is the only way. I am not sure that the KKK openly advocates violence. I'm not sure. I haven't seen it on any of their websites, but I'm not sure that they do. On the dark web, they might. Not on the regular web. I looked for it. Granted, some of their websites have been taken off now, like the Daily Stormer's down, but they don't say openly that they will start violence. We all know what they're about. We all know what they think. So we don't need to justify their actions or their thoughts. Antifa says it openly. If you say things that we consider wrong, your speech is violence, and therefore we will meet it with violence. Guess what, guys? Speech ain't violence. It's just not. It's just not. And that is wrong. And that is wrong. And I don't know who's better, Hitler or Stalin, but take your pick. Next, whenever you are confronted in your life with a slippery slope argument, A leads to B and B is bad, therefore get rid of A. Very simple way to check it. Use the same logic. Does the same logic apply or does it not? If it doesn't apply, one might lead to the other. I don't care one might lead to the other. Smoking one cigarette might lead to getting addicted. It might not. It might not. However, if it does apply, then yeah, you've got yourself an excellent verdict. That would be true. Finally, how does the Torah deal with people spewing things, with problems on the societal level? You don't deal with it with legislation. You deal with it on the societal level. You deal with it through people bringing their ideas out and saying, we're not going to stand for these things. These things are wrong. These things are disgusting. That's how you deal with it. You shame them. You have a bell and you walk behind them all the way through King's Landing. Shame, shame, shame. That's how you do it. Ladies and gentlemen, I really, really hope that our country starts moving in the right direction and that we can all just heal. Peace and love.